Now at 5, more snow moves into Indiana to add to the snow still covering the frozen downtown canal. Kevin is tracking how much and where the most should fall this time around.
State lawmakers send a message to the governor and to the people who rent their homes from landlords. The vote today, which could lead to a long-term impact on anyone who has a signed lease.
Just don't forget that these are people. This is people's grandma, grandpa, son, daughter that were taken by this disease.
A nursing home worker shares with us her painful story, losing her grandfather to COVID-19. He caught it in the same nursing home where she works. Tonight, we honor her lost loved one.
From the station working for you, this is WRTV News at 5, streaming now.
And now first at 5, snow makes a return for some of us during the evening commute. Thanks for joining us at 5. I'm Amanda Starantino.
And I'm Mark Mullins. There is a winter weather advisory in effect south of us tonight. It is a storm team alert day. Our live drive vehicle is out on I-65 south of the city there. And as you can see, the roads are clear and a lot of drivers are moving at speed. We have learned that INDOT will have about 55 trucks out in Indianapolis tonight preparing for that slushy and snowy weather that is hitting us.
And I was just driving downtown near our studio, and Kevin, it wasn't too bad, but we could see that snow coming down.
It'll be a fluffy, dry snow, just to confirm it is cold. And we had a slow start to winter, but it's rolling now. I guess.
Oh, we have it now.
Yeah,
it's
one
arrived.
way to look at it. There are just a few snowflakes in the Speedway area. You definitely find some grass poking through the snow, but over the next couple of days, we've got another opportunity for accumulating snow, and that will come on Wednesday. Southern half of the state, basically with the advisory. I'll define that in 1 second. 1 to 3 inches of fluffy, dry snowfall, with the bulk of that, the heavier amounts south of Indianapolis, will continue with the north wind around 10 miles per hour. From Bloomfield through Bloomington on over to Columbus, up to Franklin and Greenwood, over to Shelbyville, Rushville, Connorsville, south. That's the advisory area from 6 o'clock until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. See that very sharp line here? To the north of that, there's a break in the snow, and then we've been on live drive south on 65, just some flurries at best, but I think this will fill in as we go through the evening hours. There's the view from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to downtown. Visibility restricted just a little bit. Not a big deal at this point with the snow. As the snow picks up in intensity, I do think you'll see the visibility drop below a mile in spots, and obviously could quickly cover roadways that are untreated because temperatures are cold, and they'll stay cold all night tonight. Okay, between 7 and 11, notice how the snow is hanging out in the southern half of the state. It'll drift north a little bit into the early overnight. That's 4 o'clock in the morning, and then sweep to the east from there. I'll get more specific on snowfall potential here when I come back in a couple minutes.
Now to the impact of coronavirus on Indiana and the state's response to bring it under control. As of this morning, nearly 700,000 Hoosiers had received their first dose of the vaccine, and nearly 224,000 are fully vaccinated. The number of new positive cases continues to see an overall decline. The state reports 1,065 cases today. The results all recorded Saturday and Sunday. We have not seen a daily report that low since about the beginning of October. And the 7-day positivity rate continues to drop. It is now 6.6%. The number of newly reported deaths is still rather high. 58 more people have died with COVID. Those deaths occurred between December 12th and yesterday. The overall total is about 11,500.
Every day we are losing people to this deadly pandemic, and we want to make sure that we honor their memories and their lives. Tonight, our Alyssa Donovan shares the story of a woman who lost her grandfather to COVID-19 while he was recovering in the same nursing home where she works.
James Scharfenberger was the kind of grandfather who was always around.
Attended everything. He was so supportive.
At 85 years old, he was still working from home and active in his community.
Everybody loved him. He was the president of the council of his condos where he lived.
At the end of 2019, Scharfenberger went to the hospital for congestive heart failure. Instead of going home after his treatment, he was taken to a rehabilitation facility, the one his granddaughter, Christine Scharfenberger, works at.
One of my fellow nurses said, "You're all of our grandpa." You know, everybody just loved him.
But then COVID-19 hit, and suddenly the rest of the family had to stay away.
And nobody could visit him. So at least he had somebody there have somebody meet him at the window.
Those moments would be the last. An outbreak of COVID-19 started spreading in the home in May.
And I had stayed, away from his room because it had started becoming very contagious.
The 85-year-old tested positive despite having no symptoms, and he was taken to the hospital.
I remember calling my grandma that morning, like, people are surviving, people are doing okay, don't worry. And I'll never forget that. 2 days later, that was it.
Just 2 days after learning he had COVID-19, James Scharfenberger passed away at the hospital, 4 days before his 86th birthday.
This is my grandpa. He lived a full life. He gave to society. He coached, CYO, sports, and contributed a lot.
Scharfenberger, one of nearly 40 residents who died from COVID-19 at the home where Christine works.
Unfortunately, I hate to say, but we got used to it. This was my grandpa, but I've worked there for 8 years, so I was close to a lot of people there. It's a rough time.
She wants people to remember her grandfather for who he was, strong and loving, not for what he died from.
Just don't forget that these are people. This is people's grandma, grandpa, son, daughter that were taken by this disease.
I'm Alyssa Donovan, WRTV.
If you've lost someone close to you with COVID-19, connect with us. We want to share their stories so that those taken from us are never forgotten. You can reach us at facesofcovid@WRTV.com. Members of Congress are mourning the loss of one of their own who recently contracted COVID-19 and also had other health issues. Texas Republican Congressman Ron Wright died last night. He had battled health challenges for the past year, including lung cancer. He contracted COVID-19 more than 2 weeks ago. A spokesman for the 67-year-old congressman did not know the cause of death. Wright announced in January he had tested positive. Both he and his wife had been admitted to the hospital for coronavirus for the past 2 weeks.
Arguments in the historic second impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump begins tomorrow afternoon. Most Republican senators don't believe the trial is constitutional. Democrats are hoping to make the case using videos from the deadly January 6th melee at the Capitol and Trump's own statements to convict him. ABC's Faith Abube is in Washington with the latest.
Donald Trump's lawyers defending the former president ahead of his second impeachment trial, branding the process Democrats say they're using to hold Trump accountable for allegedly inciting the January 6th insurrection, political theater, urging them to drop the trial altogether. One of Trump's defense attorneys on Fox News.
When you have the president of the United States give a speech and says you should peacefully make your thinking known to the people in Congress, he's all of a sudden a villain.
But Democrats say there was nothing peaceful about Trump's rally held the same day as the Electoral College win for Joe Biden was being confirmed. Trump telling his supporters to fight to save their country and to march on the Capitol. Democrats now poring over a trove of evidence, including videos like this one from an accused rioter who said he was listening to Trump.
Donald Trump asked everybody to go home.
Trump's lawyer warning Democrats to be careful what they wish for, adding his defense also plans to use other videos to argue that Trump's words at the rally is protected free speech.
There's an awful lot of tape of cities burning and courthouses being attacked, cheered on by Democrats.
But Democrats believe it's a false equivalence, saying after his failed efforts to overturn the presidential election, Trump worked a mob of his supporters into a frenzy and aimed them like a loaded cannon down Pennsylvania Avenue.
We fight like hell.
5 people died, including a Capitol Police officer. President Biden saying this when asked whether Trump should lose his political rights.
Got an offer to come and testify. He's decided not to. We'll let the Senate work that out.
But most Senate Republicans insist even holding an impeachment trial for a former president is unconstitutional.
When something as horrible, as dastardly that happened on January 6th occurs, you cannot sweep it under the rug.
And it's not clear how long this impeachment trial will last, but if it's not wrapped up by Friday, the defense and lawmakers have agreed to pause on Friday to allow one of President Trump's lawyers to observe the Jewish Sabbath. Faith Abube, ABC News, Washington.
The Indiana Senate has voted to override Governor Holcomb's veto of a controversial landlord-tenant bill. Senate-enrolled Act 148 will prevent local governments from regulating landlord-tenant matters. Cities will not be able to implement more restrictive guidelines when it comes to things like lease terms, fees, and renters' rights. Those who support the bill say it will create predictability and certainty on landlord-tenant laws. Those who oppose it say It could lead to an increase in evictions, and they say it protects bad landlords. Several dozen people protested the bill outside the State House this morning.
This pandemic, God willing, is going to go away, but this law, if the veto is overturned, basically is going to deprive tenants of the ability to have fair housing. It's going to really give the landlords all the power.
The veto override would nullify 2 ordinances the city of Indianapolis recently passed that require landlords to provide a rights and responsibilities notice for their tenants and appropriate $250,000 to help tenants with legal aid. The House will vote on this next.
The downtown Indianapolis TJ Maxx store is preparing to open its doors on Sunday for the first time since May. The department store at 50 North Illinois Street has been closed for months since it sustained damage during the protests in May. Dozens of downtown businesses and buildings were vandalized during unrest sparked by demonstrations against the police killings of Black Americans.
The Indianapolis Public Library is getting ready to welcome the return of patrons into its branches at limited capacity. Starting a week from today, you can go into a library for computer use, browsing, hold pickup, and self-checkout. A 1-hour time limit will be enforced if a branch reaches capacity. However, the Central Library will continue to have a strict 1-hour limit and use a badging system to keep track of the number of patrons. The change is made in consultation with the Marion County Health Department and factoring in the lowest COVID positivity rate since late October and early November. Now, just ahead on WRTV News at 5, a mix-up with the paperwork. People who never filed for unemployment are having to haggle with a mistake, one that could cost time and money.
And then we've been watching for cases of COVID in animals, and there's a zoo here in Indiana keeping a close eye on 2 exotic animals. The symptoms and the prognosis still to come.
And a little pocket of heavier snow moving into Monroe County. That'll move across Lake Monroe through Bloomington. We'll follow the blue. That's the snow on radar when we come back.
We're monitoring that evening commute for you. This is I-70 west of downtown. Our live drive vehicle on the roads, and apparently conditions are just fine. A few flurries that are falling right now, according to our photographer driver on the road right now. Again, just use caution as you head out on the roadways this evening, as we do have some precipitation in the area. Kevin will have the forecast coming up. Hey, this is W-2 and 1099 season when companies send you tax statements for what you earned last year. But thousands of people are getting statements saying they earned unemployment benefits when they never even filed for unemployment. Consumer reporter John Matarese investigates so you don't waste your money.
Many people who never thought they'd be a victim of identity theft are getting hit with a hard reality this month. They're receiving 1099 forms in the mail claiming they received unemployment benefits last year. Joe McFarland is struggling to understand what's been showing up in his family's mail.
She got a 1099 from the unemployment.
His mom, long retired, received a 1099 form claiming she received thousands of dollars in unemployment last year.
I mean, she's, 87 years old. Hasn't worked in years.
Then, while checking his mail,
my wife also got one,
showing thousands in unemployment benefits. Did your wife earn unemployment money last year?
No, she never applied for it.
Unfortunately, in most cases, this is no joke. If the form includes your name, address, and last 4 digits of your social, it often means someone filed for benefits in your name.
They're likely a victim of identity theft.
Turns out people all over the country are receiving 1099 forms from all different states. Thomas Betty tells me your social was probably stolen in a data breach. He says you should go to the state's unemployment website immediately and fill out a fraud report. The state can then send a corrected 1099 to the IRS that shows you did not receive any benefits.
We will send them a corrected 1099-G form that says 0.
Joe just thinks it's outrageous someone can file for benefits under your name, but they can. This is one scam. We don't just want to tear up the form because a copy of it is on the way to the IRS. So report it so you don't waste your money. I'm John Matarese, WRTV.
A reminder, the IRS will begin accepting tax returns in just a few days on Friday. While that's a little later than usual, the deadline to file is still April 15th.
2 tigers at the Fort Wayne Children's Zoo have tested positive for the coronavirus, but both are said to be doing well. Zoo officials say animal care staff first saw mild symptoms in a male Sumatran tiger last Monday. Samples from the tigers were then collected for testing and came back positive. Access to the tigers has been restricted and staff will follow safety protocols recommended by the CDC and Indiana Department of Health.
Tigers are doing really well. Bugara, the male that first developed some symptoms on Monday with just that dry cough, really hasn't progressed much more than that and is actually already starting to resolve, it seems. The female, she had just one meal where she wasn't quite as excited about it, but at the next meal was just as energetic as usual. She was heard coughing slightly yesterday, but again, no progression there. So I expect a full recovery very quickly.
And it's not clear how the tigers were infected, and the zoo is working with the Allen County Health Department and the State Board of Animal Health to identify potential sources. The Board of Animal Health will decide if testing should be done on additional animals. At this point, no other animals have been tested. Thank goodness they're doing okay, though, Kevin.
We go from the big cats to bird watching. Have you got time here? You know cats like to sit in the window and watch birds. They're, excuse me, that is unmistakably the state bird of Indiana. Right there, he's got his back to us, though. But we can recognize him. He can't hide from us, especially with no leaves on that tree. It's just you and us.
It's a pretty cardinal.
And he's been eating. I mean, it's been a good winter, right? He looks fluffy. Okay, let's show you some snow. It's light snow in central Indiana. This is our Weather Now view looking over Lucas Oil Stadium. Little frosting for all of central Indiana. Visibility is not restricted too much. With the light snow that's falling, it picks up a bit in the southern portion of the state. Bloomington, for example, you're going to hit a little more moderate snowfall here in a minute. From Bloomington up through Johnson County, Shelby County, over toward Rushville and Richmond South. That's where 2 to maybe 3 inches of snow is most likely. From Indy to the north, looking at 1 inch to maybe a little bit more. And you can see the fine line here. We've got a northern Indiana snow that will continue to move northeast away from the viewing area. This coming in from southern Illinois. There are little pockets there that will be a little bit heavier that'll do 2 things. Lower the visibility and I think cover the streets with snow. All that running through southern Morgan and Johnson counties now, as well as Bloomington to Lake Monroe, back toward Bloomfield, and then along Interstate 70 in southern portions of Hendricks County, a little heavier snow there as well. The darker the blue, the more restriction you might see in visibility right over Cloverdale, down 231 towards Spencer, and then Bloomington, that'll roll into the hills of Brown County as well. Notice the theme tonight. 7 o'clock, southern half of the state continues with the snow. This is light snow, but over time, again, with the dry conditions, it will be a fluffy snowfall and add up to 2 to maybe 3 inches to the south with isolated higher amounts. Now, I can get models that'll show much less than this, kind of picking the middle of the road here, and about 1 inch or a little more in the metro area. Temperatures tomorrow, as we're between weather systems, in the 20s, about 26 for the high in the metro area. Some spots cooler than that to the north, but we take a break from the snow. I emphasize that because a new system will brew on Wednesday, bringing a stronger wind, gusting to 20 miles per hour and increasing our chance for snow as we get late morning into the afternoon. Watch this sweep in 7 to 1 o'clock. There's the light snow arriving, overspreading all of central Indiana in the afternoon hours. Another blast of colder air. Friday, 19 degrees, down to 14 on Valentine's Day. If you get chocolate on Valentine's Day, probably wouldn't melt until maybe May. Temperatures will be down 2 below. Well, of course, if it's in your pocket or something, you're going to have problems. Right. But 2 below by Monday morning.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Yeah, and it melts in your hand, too, as we've learned through the years. Well, we're adding a bit to our snow totals. We haven't had nearly the amount of snow that they've seen on the East Coast. For one man in Connecticut, it's the perfect material to replicate the Senator Bernie Sanders Inauguration Day meme. There it is. In Davis Sepulveda's front yard in New Haven, you'll find the Vermont senator in a coat and those now famous mittens. The artist says that he's always had a fascination with snow.
I had to make snow forts, have snowball fights, that whole thing. So I've always loved working in snow and with snow.
He said he's been making snow creations for years. His past displays have included dragons, Buddhas, and a President Snowbama. Get it? All right. And another artistic creation to tell you about. Wait until you hear what it took to build this sweet palace. Tag along with us to Arizona to hear the reason behind the Cookie Castle construction. Coming up on WRTV.
Indiana Girl Scouts are partnering with Grubhub this year to help with cookie sales during the pandemic, and they'll have regular booths at stores later this month. But one scout in Arizona got really creative to boost her sales. She built a castle out of cookies. It is 13 feet tall by 13 feet wide and made of 4,000 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. The walls, for example, are made of do-si-dos.
You walk in and there's a drawbridge and there's 2 large circular towers covered in red tagalongs. There's a archway with the drawbridge that is covered in green Thin Mint boxes.
The Scouts put an emphasis on teaching young ladies all kinds of life skills, and this castle has been a real learning experience for Maya.
There was math, there was science, there was engineering, there was building, there was problem solving.
She got a truckload of wood to jumpstart the project, and thankfully she got some help from her family and a few friends. The castle is on display at a shopping mall in Phoenix. Maya's ultimate goal is to set a record for her cookie sales. She's off to a great start. One real estate company bought nearly $12,000 worth of cookies.
That looks tasty. One tasty home. Loving it. Loving it. Time to order some, right? All right, tonight we are digging into how well COVID vaccines work against new variants and strains of the virus, what we're finding out, and what you should know. That's all new at 6 p.m. for you.
And getting a head start on a career while still in high school. The school helping kids prepare for a job in healthcare and land a job quickly. That's next at 5:30.